Today, I want to talk about walking.
What does your morning routine look like at the moment?
Doctor, we've been told for years 10,000 steps. What's going on?
Pick up your bed and walk.
I confess sometimes we'll take a walk during that time.
3 years ago, I found myself in one of the lowest slumps in terms of health and fitness. Even though I made it a point to work out every day in my room, day to day I couldn't focus, I had a sporadic sleep schedule, and it seemed like the days passed really quickly. When I began researching the best daily routines, I was surprised by the science behind the simple habit of just walking 10,000 steps each day. Apparently, even some of the greatest thinkers in history implemented this into their daily routine. And during this time, I learned the specific methods they use to maximize the benefits of walking. I found out how we discovered this seemingly magical threshold of 10,000 steps a day, and how it has the power to completely influence our sleep, creativity, longevity, and even cognitive function. And it was at that point, 3 years ago, that I made the commitment to walk 10,000 steps a day. And it's been just over 1,000 days now. So in this video, I want to talk about why bother walking, the scientific benefits of walking, how it's changed my life, and how you can easily implement it into a busy schedule. Now, the first thing is actually something that a lot of people miss. It's not actually about the steps that you get in a day or even the calories that you burn. You've probably heard the 10,000 steps number before, as if it's some magical threshold between healthy and unhealthy, but that's not entirely true. In fact, the number was initially created by a Japanese company to market their pedometer. They called the device the Manpoke, which translates roughly to the 10,000 steps counter. But even though the number was completely arbitrary, since then studies have found that hitting 10,000 steps a day to be a pretty good threshold, with 7,000 steps being the minimum. If you run, it's pretty easy to hit 10,000 steps a day. But when you walk 10,000 steps, the process is the same, you're walking the same amount of steps, but the result is totally different. By walking 10,000 steps a day, you ensure that you're getting a higher baseline of movement of 2+ hours every single day. So the key thing is not just hitting the steps, but hitting the steps through walking.
Now, what a bunch of studies have found to improve cognitive function and memory acquisition and retention and learning. Now, the amount of BDNF produced is actually a function of the volume of physical activity. Essentially, the exercise volume is a function of the intensity of exercise, the duration of exercise, and the frequency of exercise. So all of those things are important for boosting up your BDNF.
So the first reason why we should walk is because we're born to be constantly moving. Just by improving this one thing, you'll find that it totally transforms the way you work, feel, and sleep, which I'll talk about the scientific benefits later in the video. But you can't really just front load your 10,000 steps in the first hour of the day and then spend the rest of the day in the chair. The science has proven that we're born to walk more than any other form of cardiovascular activity.
We're not meant to run, we're born to walk, okay? We need to be walking more today.
Which leads me to my next point, starting with the idea of longevity. So recently I got the opportunity to visit Brian Johnson's house and see how he eats, trains, and maintains peak performance.
Wait, am I wearing a shirt?
Okay. I guess I'll take that shirt off. I love that. If you don't know who he is, he's the world's #1 biohacker. Spending $2 million a year on his body. But one of the major things I learned from him is that most of the major principles that he follows comes down to following the fundamentals to perfection. Everything is optimized for a long-term perspective. When I left his house, all I could think about is, what is the workout and routine that I could continue doing for the next 30, 40 years? I still do resistance training because maintaining muscle is very important as you get older. But from what I learned, walking is one of the best ways to stay active no matter what age you are. Runners, powerlifters all have a high incidence of injury. Even my grandma in her 80s is able to walk for 2 to 3 hours a day, hitting 10,000 steps for over a decade. So the second reason why you should walk is that it's the most sustainable form of movement that you can do for your entire life. But not only is walking one of the best exercises from a longevity and sustainability perspective, it literally is correlated with a longer lifespan based on clinical studies. That leads me to the next part, which is the scientific benefits of walking. You've probably heard before that Japan has one of the highest levels of life expectancy in the world. When I lived in Japan for 6 months, I'd easily hit 15,000 steps a day. And on the weekends, it wouldn't be that rare for me to hit over 30,000 steps just hanging out with friends in the city. Because using a car is pretty rare over there, you naturally just walk everywhere, and so you're literally staying active the entire day. The science has shown that people who walk 7,000 to 10,000 steps a day have a 40 to 50% lower rate of all-cause mortality, meaning that walking more is highly correlated with a longer lifespan. My time living over there has definitely influenced me a lot to continue this habit. One of the biggest benefits of walking is also that it has a very low impact on hunger. So when I did the One Punch Man challenge, I ran a 6.2 mile run every single day, and I'd often find myself pretty hungry at the end of each workout. Sometimes the daily calorie burn, it's consistently over 1,000, but sometimes it gets to like 1,600, which is pretty wild. I do like how I can eat a lot more though. What I found is that when I walked the same amount of steps, I wouldn't really feel that hunger spike. And the science basically has shown that because of the low intensity of walking, it doesn't spike the ghrelin hormone, also known as the hunger hormone. And it even stabilizes your blood sugar if you walk after eating. So walking is actually one of the easiest and most counterintuitive ways to stay lean. In fact, one of the leanest periods of my life is when I was in college and I didn't have a car and my bike got stolen, so I basically just had to walk everywhere.
What this study actually found is that the gray matter, which is the part of the brain that holds the nerve cell bodies, did not shrink as they likely do with all of us as we age in the people who tended to walk the most.
Let's walk a lot.
Biologists are now theorizing that our brains only began evolving because our ancestors walked as much as 12 miles a day on average. And the science has shown that our brain still craves that experience. So walking not only improves our physical health, but it also helps our brain function optimally. Steve Jobs, who's one of my idols, was particularly known for his walking meetings. Apparently he was often seen walking barefoot around the Apple campus. And I actually read that he designed the new Apple campus to be a beautiful place to walk, think, and talk. In his biography, I have it. In his biography, the author talks about how taking a long walk was Jobs' preferred way to have a serious conversation. He believed that his most creative ideas came when he was walking.
This is good. Really good. I know.
Recently, a Stanford University study showed that walking can increase creative thinking by an average of 60%, and it even persists after you sit down. When you walk, you're also in a state called optical flow, which is basically just visual stimulation from things passing by on this way. Studies have shown that it decreases the part of the brain that is responsible for fear and anxiety. And so it really has this calming effect when you go for a walk. If you walk in the morning, the sunlight to your eyes also helps regulate your circadian rhythm, which can help you feel more energized and get better sleep. I can say that my life has truly changed since I incorporated this into my daily routine. Just my baseline level of fitness has increased dramatically. Even though I still go to the gym multiple times a week, now I hit 10,000 steps on top of that. And the routine is simple enough that I can still hit it even if I'm traveling. Immanuel Kant, the great thinker, was particularly known for his daily walks, which would be upwards of 4 to 6 hours every day. That's maybe like 40,000 steps. But during this time, he'd go across town, have conversations, observe people, and just write down new ideas. I think sometimes we find that the days go by really quickly. We're often bombarded with lots of dopamine, like the next video in our feed, an email, or even just a notification on our phone. But I find that going for a daily walk really helps me slow down and reflect on my day. I usually go for a lot of walks, you know.
So we go on walks after we eat.
Yeah, because it reduces your blood sugar. If you find that you struggle to hit 10,000 steps because of your schedule, you'll probably find the next part to be quite useful. So tip number 1 is actually something that I've struggled with for a long time, which is the idea to actually find time to go on a walk. A lot of times I'll be too caught up in work or be on a call, and it just seems like a lot of friction to have to go on a walk. But the biggest tip I've learned to make this sustainable is to go for a walk the first thing when you wake up. At minimum, I probably get 30 minutes of walking right when I wake up, and if I'm not in a rush, I'll oftentimes get an hour. Tip number 2 is to multitask. Oftentimes we don't go on walks because we don't see it as productive enough. If I told you to dedicate 2 hours of your day to just walking, you probably would say that you don't have the time. But a lot of the tasks that we do day to day can actually be done while on a walk. Like for example, walking meetings, listening to podcasts, catching up with friends, or even listening to audiobooks. A lot of times I'll spend my morning walks journaling with a voice memo, or even just doing walking meditation. There's something quite calming about just walking in pure silence. The next tip is probably something you're already doing to a certain extent, but you haven't thought about. So if you have an activity tracker or an Apple Watch, it's already automatically tracking your steps. But one of the key ways to ensure that you do hit 10,000 steps is to check your steps at the end of every day. Even though hitting 10,000 steps isn't the key thresholds for health, it is a nice goal that you can work towards. And just looking at how many steps you took that day means it's more likely that you'll try to hit more the next day. Tip number 4 is to make it easy. One of the habits I took away after living in Japan briefly is to walk whenever possible. Even just driving somewhere, I'll tend to park further away because it just means I'll get more steps in. And one thing I learned from Casey Neistat is to always take the stairs if it's available, never the escalator or elevator. And tip number 5 is to only use social media while walking. So one of the benefits of this habit is that it also helps reduce your screen time usage. If you pair walking with social media usage, then you'll actually start craving going for walks, because that's the time that you allowed yourself to browse Instagram or watch YouTube videos. And actually, when I lived in Japan and I was walking 15,000 steps a day on average, I spent most of that time reviewing Japanese vocabulary cards. Studies have actually shown that walking can help boost your memory. If you're interested in how I was able to memorize so many vocabulary words in a short period of time, I made a video where I talk about the method in depth. You can check that out here if you want. Hopefully you learned something new in this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.